What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Collection Commentary. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this absolutely gorgeous Gavko small Mako custom knife. This thing is completely ridiculous. I have nicknamed it the Gator Gav because it reminds me of an alligator, so hashtag Gator Gav. Let's go ahead and jump right into the features and flaws on this one, guys. I want to start off with an overview of the aesthetics because there's so much minute detail going on here that if you don't take the time to really look over all of it, you don't really get the feel of like this is a really special custom, when in reality it is. So let's take some time to go over the details of this knife. The first thing to note is that there is this really like micro milling right in this area and then up towards the tang. I'm gonna stand up here and show you guys. So there's this milling here, and this is textured, and then that matches up here as well. So you can see it right there, and then it's all through the tang, so it's all around the flipper tab. You can see it's like a micro stippled finish. So that's super cool. The next thing to note is that there is this little hint of purple at the tip of the lock bar. And this is the only purple that appears on the knife. And I love it. When I saw that in the pictures, that was like the final touch that like made me buy this knife. Was just, it seemed so perfect for me. It was all this green and blue, and it looked super cool. And then it was like calling my name by putting that little touch of purple there. So that's definitely one of my favorite parts of the knife. It gives it a lot of little flavor and character. I think it's super neat. And then the next thing is that there is the clean transition here from this milling into this kind of wave milling. What I mean by that is, if you run your finger over this, it's hard to explain. The transition's been done so well that you just don't, it doesn't really feel like the way it looks like it kind of stops and starts, but you really don't get that feeling. And then when you have the pinch grip going on, your thumb ends up right in this little area here, and it just feels so good. It feels like it's this whole little area right here feels like a perfect little cutout for your thumb when you're pinch gripping. So it's amazing that the aesthetic transition here actually has a functional use, and gosh, I really appreciate that. It's pretty amazing. The next thing to take note of is this hurricane pattern on the golden pivot, or the bronze pivot. So it's not just anodized. You can actually see that it's been textured in kind of a whirlwind pattern, which can be reflective. I just think that's so amazing. What a cool detail. Then the next thing to talk about is the hash milling that is kind of all along the edges. So it's all along the spine of the blade. You can see here. Very neat. And then it's also all through the edges of the frame. So it starts up here, carries through the frame, all the way down. Then it's all the way on the inside of the backspacer, as you can see as well. Very cool. Then of course it's done all around the edge of the flipper tab as well. And then all around the edge of the frame, up to the back, and then a little bit on the inside of the finger hole as well. It's a bit of a different type of texturing, but it's still texturing nonetheless. And then you have the ridiculous backspacer. So what he did here is he put a backspacer in. You can kind of see it right here, how it's separate from the frame. He put it in, and then he did this milling with the backspacer in, with the tips of these little areas right around the edges of the backspacer. So it's one solid mill pattern, starting where the blue is up here and coming all the way down through and down through here. but you can see how this big chunk comes out of all 3 pieces of titanium, and that is true of the whole pattern. And then he's done this reflective blue anodization, which is just completely ridiculous and something I've never seen on a Gavko. So it makes the knife so unique. It's absolutely insane. And so, yeah, if you compare the work on this knife to what you see on like a mid-tech, you really see the bang for your buck and the intensity of your dollars transitioning from, a $650 mid-tech to a $900 custom, or even some of his $800 customs. There's really a serious level of work here that it just takes place. And when you first look at the knife, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, it has a bronze pivot. It has some stuff on the edge, on the spine of the blade. And then it has this kind of mill pattern down the handle. And then it's got this cool, flashy, pointy backspacer. And that's it, right? You can kind of like view the knife and then like walk away without ever noticing any more than that. But the pattern on the pivot and the fact that the milling, the hash milling goes all the way around the flipper tab and through the inside of the backspacer, and just the intricacy of doing this mill work on the backspacer here as one unit, and just like all the little touches make it so special. It's just such a wicked knife. So let's jump right into the action as well. When this knife closes, it's a little bit rumbly, and that's because the bearings are wearing through this stipple pattern that I showed you earlier. And that really gives his customs flavor. If you've ever heard sort of like a rattly sound of a Gavko closing and ever wondered what that was like, it's a little bit of rumbliness, but it's not that it makes the knife not smooth. So the interesting thing here is that this knife is actually the most drop shut capable knife that I've ever had. It is more consistent and more clean than either of the Thorburns that I own. But it's not smooth in the sense that you don't feel the blade moving, because you do, because it's kind of rumbly. And it's cool. It gives the knife character. It matches the grunge feel of the rest of the knife with all the kind of like hand done, like rough edge kind of milling and stuff. The action fits, and so it absolutely rockets out. You can obviously finger flick it, you can thumb hole flick it, and you can use the flipper tab, both light switch and push button. And the knife always just slams closed. It loves to close just so cleanly, smoothly, consistently, at a fast but consistent pace. And I mean, it really stands out as the best open and close of pretty much any knife. I'd say my Thorburn L36 has a better deployment, but this knife has the best close of any knife. And so it's really interesting because you don't get that rumbliness, that special character, that flavor that you get with his customs with the mid-techs. And so that's why I wanted to bring that up, because his mid-techs are very, very smooth, incredibly smooth, the kind of smooth that you look for in an expensive knife. But these just have that extra added character and added flavor that really makes it super special. Part of me does wish, at the beginning, I kind of wish that it had ceramic bearings instead of steel for the sound, and I just thought that the rumble might sound cooler on ceramics, but I've actually kind of rescinded that idea. I no longer think that's true. I actually think I really like the kind of obvious sound of the steel bearings. And, even though this knife is such a small package, I was worried about it when it was small, because I'm not super into the smaller knives, even though I am kind of transitioning to that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's still, this middle finger flicking still works super well. I have no complaints about all the, well, I'm pretty bad at the thumb hole thing, but it works. But the middle finger flick is still just so fun and works so well, even on such a small package, which I was a little bit worried about. And so then I guess I will just say, well, here, real quick, let me talk about the ergonomics of the knife, because I did mention that earlier. So the pinch grip is perfect, and let me explain why. So when you're holding the knife, if you've got pinch grip, you hold it like this, right? And like I said, your thumb wants to go right here, right in this little kind of divot that's been created for it. So the thumb sits there. The rest of your hand, your middle finger fits nicely into this slot here, so you get some grip, and this little point area kind of gets in there, so you have some good grip. These two fingers fit very well around the edge of around the kind of the whole circumference of the handle, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then, of course, your index finger, bam, right there in that little harpoon bit. And so this has a perfect pinch grip. It's super good. Your fingers can actually make contact here, which give you a lot of confidence. Make sure that the knife's not going anywhere in this direction. And it just feels super great. And then saber grip, despite how small this knife is, you actually still get a bit of surface area poking out past the pinky, and I have kind of a medium glove. And then, of course, your thumb is going to fit right into that harpoon. And it's got sweet ergonomics for such a tiny knife, and that was something I was definitely concerned with. So now I guess I'll move on to sort of the story time. So for one, I am moving on to smaller knives. You guys have seen I have the L48 in the collection now. I have this little thing, and I'm looking at a couple other smaller options as well. So we'll see what ends up happening in the future. I'm not totally done with my pocket swords, but I am kind of transitioning to smaller carry knives. And with that said, the story behind this knife is that it was up on Nordic Knives for quite a while. A couple months at least is how long I was tracking it for. And when I first came across the knife, I like completely lost my mind, and just the aesthetics blew me away. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to have this knife. And then I saw the price and the size, and I realized it was a sub 8-inch knife, which is really small for me. And it was $900. And I wasn't really sure. I had paid $650 for my mid-tech, and I was super happy with that. And I was like, I don't really know how much more, another $250 is going to get me on one of these things. Like, I'm downgrading in size. Do I really want that? Is it really worth it? And I kind of told myself no for quite a while. And I kept checking back on the knife. There were a bunch of other knives that I was interested in. Some I pulled the trigger on. Some I kind of held off. I tend to, have a handful of customs on my mind that are available on the market at any given time, and whether or not I move on them kind of depends on my mood. But I tracked it for a few months, and I just kept telling myself it was way too small. Like, there's no way you're gonna like this knife. There's no way it's gonna be big enough for you. Don't buy it. It's $900 is a lot of money for a Gavko. Like, don't do that. And so I pretty much talked myself out of it for quite a while, at least 8 weeks. And then I finally got around to the point where I hadn't bought a knife in a little bit, and I was getting pretty antsy, and I was like, there are a lot of Gavkos that are really catching my eye right now. I like this one aesthetically the most, so hey, I really like the L48. It's a small knife. Let's try it out. And I went ahead and pulled the trigger, and I gotta say, it was worth every freaking penny. This is pretty much the coolest knife I've ever had. My Thorburns are up there, but this knife is so genuinely special. It's funny, there's actually already a buyer for this knife, so it's not going to be mine for long. But I am completely in love with it, and it's the reason I'm letting it go is, and I'm letting my mid-tech go as well, is because I'm at the point now where I'm so in love with Gavko in the way that I'm so in love with Thorburns that I'm going to keep selling those knives and continue to buy them from the same maker so that I can try a whole variety of their knives, because there comes a point where, I don't just like a knife. I like a philosophy. I like everything that a maker does. And I would say that Todd Big, Andre Thorburn, and now Michael Gavko are the three makers that so far really have landed that permanent spot in my collection. Also Eugene from Olamic, I do have to say, I keep forgetting I ordered a custom compact from him. That's why it's not on my mind. It's going to take a few more weeks before I get that. But Olamic is also the fourth maker where there's always a spot in my collection for one of those makers' knives. And, if I have to do a one in, one out to be able to afford to keep trying other knives from them, then that's what I'm going to do. So, I'm not in love with any one knife. I'm in love with the whole, everything behind it, the make of it, the thought process, the build quality, everything like that. So this one is going to go, but definitely expect to see more Gavkos from me soon. If you would like to see those videos, please remember to subscribe. If you guys would like to see Sorry, if you would like to see awesome pictures, you can follow me on Instagram. If you'd like to send me a knife for lovely loners like this sweet Gavko collab, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. If you like this video, please hit that like button. It definitely helps me to know which videos you guys appreciate versus ones that you don't. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.